Yeah, because they want to treat people who have a better chance, and they have so many, they're so overwhelmed that their cutoff is, yes. Italy has decided that if you're 60 or older, they're not going to treat you because they're doing triage. Their medical system is so overtaxed that they can't treat everybody. So they're going with people who have a better chance. And you've still, if you're 60 or over, you still have, if you're between 60 and 70, you still have a 90% chance um, of living through it. If you're 70 to 80, it's like an 80% chance. 80 and over, I don't know. But anyway, I don't know. They're saying they're getting overwhelmed, and they also have people who have other illnesses and diseases and medical, heart attacks and shit. So, yeah, they're. My wife was telling me that that being overweight increases the chances of having a bad outcome with this shit.
Well, there's also the Italian. If you keep bringing up Italy, I'm going to keep saying that Italy is not America. For one thing, they have the oldest population, the second oldest population in the world. That's a factor that makes more of them die. And the other thing is, Italy smokes. Your typical Italian smokes far more than Americans, smokes cigarettes. And finally, Italians are touchy-feely. They like to kiss and grab each other. It's demonstrable much more than Americans do. After bringing in thousands of Chinese workers from Wuhan, who they embraced physically.
Okay, so I have a graph that I just happen to have up. This is Italy versus the U.S. We're in red, and Italy is in gray. And if you see, the red curve is curving upward at a faster rate than the gray Italy curve did. Now, Italy has a
It'll 9%. Slow down. They've had it longer than we have. It'll slow down.
Not, well, anyway.
All right, let's move on. Are you ready to move on to another subject?
Yes, yeah. You're doing a medical, right. a life extension experiment.
Yeah. So, Director, please put this in the liner notes for the show, because people that are interested in life extension will want to see this. So, what happened was, as you recall, last week I announced that I was going to take the NMN experiment in extending your life. Now, to recap, NMN is a molecule that is taken along with several other molecules to extend your life. And the reason that they know it can extend your life is that they can examine the difference in your cells within a few months. So you don't have to wait 20 years to know if it's working. You can find out as soon as they examine your cells. Now, last week I gave a little incorrect information, so I want all of you to always verify everything I say by studying David Sinclair's book and his website. I believe it's called Lifespan on YouTube. But he's a Harvard biochemist, and he's the head of an anti-aging department at Harvard that is very well funded. There's also a department at MIT that's working on the same thing, and they have the same findings. So last week I said that I was going to be taking transresveratrol and NMN. And I forgot to mention that if you do those two, you have to take folic acid and vitamin B12. Because if you don't, those two molecules can actually kind of work against your cells. So there's that. Also, I left out that David Sinclair also takes metformin, but the reason I'm not going to be taking metformin is because I work out so much, and he doesn't. And the metformin can counteract the beneficial anti-aging effects of working out. Now, last week I mentioned that I was going to be taking a test, a blood test, with a reputable company called Inside Tracker. And for $100, I took this test. Now, there's a lot of confusion about which tests, which companies can be trusted. So I was apprehensive about that because you can take a test and they can just say, oh, you're fine, or you're not fine, you need to take more tests, or whatever. But it turns out that the results of the test were the same results that I got from a regular blood test that I took to get medical insurance about a year and a half ago. So I know that this is an accurate company.
What were the results? What numbers, what stats were they pulling?
All right, well, I'm getting to that, but I'm doing this sequentially. So this company is Inside Tracker, and I'd like to say I recommend them. I know they're not bullshitting because they did give me the same results. Now, if I'm getting the same results, why would I take the test again? Why not just use what the doctor gave me a year and a half ago? Because what Inside Tracker does is they analyze what you're deficient in very specifically and give you things you can do about it. My doctor was able to ascertain the same deficiencies, but he was very vague about what to do about it. And this is really specific. And also, Inside Tracker gives you a year that you are biologically. So, to understand this, you have two ages. You have your chronological age, which is the age that it says on your birth certificate and your driver's license. But you also have a biological age. That's the age you really are compared to the rest of humanity. They can evaluate what your true age is. So what your body really is, the shape your body's really in. And I got some good news and some bad news. Hang on for a second.
Good thing we're...
The bad news is that I'm actually older than my chronological age. Instead of being 59, it says I'm 68.
According to what markers?
I'll give you the markers in a minute. I'm just developing this. But the good news is that some of my things some of my markers are really good. So here's what they evaluate. They evaluate your vitamin D, the amount of, they take your blood, and they get back to you real fast. They take your blood and they evaluate your levels of vitamin D, your blood sugar, your testosterone, and I'm sorry to say 2 or 3 other things, which I forgot, because I don't have it up. They have problems with their website, I have to say. It's kind of hard to get back into the information. They give you the information by email. But what you need to know is that the reason that the reason that I'm older than my age is because I have a severe vitamin D deficiency.
That's so fixable. You just take a shitload of vitamin D.
Exactly. And it said exactly how much to take. And I know that I have that because I already knew I had it, and it's because I stay out of the sun so much working, and I deliberately stay out of the sun. So I have to stop. I have to take 6,000 units of vitamin D.
Yeah.
The second thing is my glucose levels, the blood sugar levels in my blood are apparently very important, and they're bad.
What are they?
And the reason I couldn't recall that. I just read, I skimmed over this
Over
because
100?
I was going to study it more carefully. I couldn't get back into the website because my password and name aren't working out. So I couldn't get back into the numbers. I'm just telling you what I read.
Did you fast for 12 hours before taking your blood?
Yes, I did. I did. Yeah, I did, and I also got the test within an hour of waking up. So that I didn't sleep well the night before, but I don't know if that affected it.
No,
but it did say. All right. Well, what it suggested was two things. It made two very clear suggestions. Number one, take a shitload of vitamin D. Number two, I need something that reduces your blood sugar levels.
Metformin.
That is a supplement that I can just buy.
Metformin.
It's either that they mentioned that, and they mentioned something else like a kind of alpha I don't know what it is, alpha acid or whatever. I'll look it up.
Alpha lipoic acid. Alpha lipoic acid.
That's it. Yeah.
But
I need that.
Just bite the bullet and take the metformin, and maybe you yourself say I'm pretty ripped, and I take a shitload of metformin. It hasn't, I'm skinnier than I was before I intentionally lost 30 pounds, but I'm still, I still can work out all I want. I'm still strongish. So just bite the bullet. You don't need to be able to bench press 225 at age 58 and a half. I mean, you still could, and I bet you could take metformin and still be able to do that if that was your intention. And it's hard to say how much you do.
Well, let me just finish up my report.
Okay.
Let me just finish the report because there's people that might find this of interest. So it said that I was to take that, but also it said that it correctly predicted that I was not getting any aerobic exercise. So I'm going to start doing aerobics 2 or 3 days a week. No more than 20 minutes is necessary, and it can be all different kinds of aerobics. And one of the reasons I've never done aerobics is I hate running.
Yeah, me too.
But it turns out that martial arts, which I enjoy, is something you can do, and really anything, basketball, volleyball, whatever you enjoy doing counts as aerobic activity, and that should take care of the problem. Now, to summarize, though, I am going to. It takes 12 weeks to correct all these problems, and I can correct them all without NMN and transresveratrol, which are the super molecules. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take normal supplements and change my lifestyle and see if I can get the numbers normalized. Then I'll take the test again in 3 months, and when I'm normal, I will then start taking NMN transresveratrol with folic acid and vitamin B12 and maybe metformin. Definitely metformin on the days that I don't work out.
Okay.
Because you only have to work out 6 days a week.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
All right. So, Vince Corner, because it was the rest of our fucking show was super mathy. I want to bring up, you've accused the Democrats of wanting to abort babies all the way up to and after birth. If you don't like the baby, you just want to, which is a garbage accusation. But I've had a change of mind about aborting babies without brains. anencephalic babies, babies that just for some reason there was a glitch and their brains did not form. They've just got a little nub that handles basic reflexes. Instead of having a brain that's 6 inches across in a baby, they've got a nub that's maybe an inch across that just handles stuff like breathing for a while. One of those babies, once born, might live for 72 hours. But it's got no brain. It's got a little caved-in head, a sad little head. But I don't think we should abort those babies anymore, even though it's a frickin' tragedy. I've got a new idea where we take those babies without brains and we sell them to billionaires. If a family has this tragedy of having a baby that they discover in the womb that it doesn't have a brain, then it's a tragic. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but it's also a payday because they could sell that baby to a billionaire for $2.5 million. And what happens is you take that baby and you set it up on some kind of mental pacemaker where a baby with no brain can only live for a few days, but if you get in there with some stuff that control, stop seizures and keep its breathing and its heart function stable, then you install that stuff, and then you give that baby drugs to make its skull grow bigger, and you maybe see if you can grow some. This won't get really good until 10 years from now, so you might be able to grow some extra brain tissue in there, just so you have more than the little nub. Say this is the year 2030. And then after the baby's gotten a little bigger, let's say 9 months, and the baby, you've grown a big fat skull for the baby, or you've cracked the top of the skull off, you've sawed it off, and are ready to install a bigger plastic dome, and then you go ahead and you drop the brain of a 79-year-old billionaire into that skull that was previously empty because no brain. And then you use all sorts of high-tech AI technology to link the function of the old guy's brain with the brainless body, and now you've got a toddler almost with a rich-ass 79-year-old's brain in it. It's like a new lease on life for the billionaire. And the family who suffered the tragedy, they get paid a bunch of money, and they get to see their kid grow up as a weird 2-year-old and 81-year-old, billionaire. Who might keep treating him to cars and houses and stuff because he's so happy to grow up as a new little boy and have a whole second life. So there you go. That's what we do. Everybody's happy.
Who could argue with that?
Okay.
All right. So while Rick was talking, I realized I forgot to say the good part of my test. The reason I'm able to yell at Rick is consistently and loudly is because I'm loaded with testosterone. So that's the one thing the test did show. Probably because of the weightlifting I do every day.
Do you remember your number for that?
560 or something like that.
Yeah, the last time I took the test, it was in that range. The reason you get so much quality yelling in this fucking show is that we're each surprisingly high in testosterone.
Yeah, and the reason what that means is that even though the test showed that I'm actually older than my biological age, my testosterone hasn't really gone down. So so that for the people listening who are interested in their health, what that means is that you can keep your testosterone high and still not be in optimum health, but at least you can get that from weightlifting. That's all I have to say.
Weightlifting
I assume it's from weightlifting.
and I don't know. I weightlift a lot, but I also like beat off, probably more times than average for somebody my age, which I think also is helpful, though.
Does that increase the testosterone?
I don't know. Also, I take a testosterone blocker so my hair doesn't fall out, which paradoxically raises my testosterone levels because my body's like, where the fuck is all the testosterone? Because it blocks a kind of testosterone, the kind that makes you go bald and makes your prostate blow up. The testosterone blocker blocks that. That's also the dipstick that your body uses to see how much testosterone you have. So the dipstick comes up low, so your body pumps out more testosterone, which is a mixed blessing.
Right. So wait a minute. What is the blocker that you're taking? What's it called?
Well, I take dutasteride, which is good for my prostate and for my hair.
Does this do the same thing as Propecia, or is it the same thing?
Propecia
is the same effect. Because Rick got me on Propecia.
Yes,
so they're basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's no, dutasteride blocks two forms of dihydrotestosterone, and I forget what the generic name for Propecia is, but it only blocks one form. So you have perhaps 80% of your DHT blocked, and I have maybe 95% of my DHT blocked.
So actually, the testosterone that we both have may not be from the weightlifting. It may be from the hair block, the testosterone.
Maybe
block.
A little bit. I heard a figure of a 40% boost, but I've never been able to find a study that substantiates that.
Interesting. All right, so maybe either way, we've got plenty of it. So are there any other topics?
There's one more topic that I don't find that interesting and that we'll know more about next week, which is related to the virus, which is right now the House and the Senate are fighting over a $1 to $2 trillion stimulus bill. The Republicans want more corporate grants to businesses that are in trouble. The Democrats want more grants going to individuals, families, and it's everybody's on the sides. You'd think, I don't know if we need to argue about that shit.
I also heard that Nancy Pelosi tried to put in an abortion amendment into this thing too. Something about allowing abortion.
I haven't read. I mean, I heard the same thing, but neither of us knows exactly what it is. But it may be. I know the state of Ohio just shut down people getting abortions if their abortions can safely be postponed because of the strain on the medical system. So I assume that Nancy Pelosi probably put something, I don't know, I'm just guessing, put something in that says that if you need to get an abortion, then we're not going to let the coronavirus stand in the way of that.
Well,
but I don't know, so it's not worth arguing over since we don't really know.
I do have an opinion about this. I would rather, they're looking at, the Democrats are, as usual, they're demagoguing. They're trying to say that the Republicans only care about big business, whereas they care about the little man. Well, what I've seen them putting into the bill is elaborate, ludicrously costly workers' comp things that employers would have to pay for workers. So, as usual, it's sort of a union bill. It's sort of like the Democrats they're going to drain as much money as they can out of anybody that employs anybody. That's what I'm pissed off about, because people can't afford to hire an employee and then just pay them forever because of the Democrats and their coronavirus bill. That's what I was looking at. Now you can disagree, but I am leading to my solution. My solution is I would rather not have the Democrats or the Republicans giving away trillions of dollars. I would rather they just stop shutting down the United States and on April the 1st, let everybody go back to work and we'll make our own $1 trillion.
Yeah, you can't. Okay, go ahead.
I know you're going to, I understand that you object to that, but my point is that if you intend to keep the U.S. shut down for another couple of months, then I guess what you'll do is you'll print money, that just print paper that's worthless, causing ludicrous inflation, and you'll borrow trillions of dollars that will never be able to pay off in order to fend off a depression that the government will have created by shutting down all the businesses in the U.S. My solution is that we have a normal flu season where people die, but people have access to a cure, and they can stay home if they want to, but the businesses go back to work, and we make our own money, which is the healthier way economically. I also want to say, again, I want to reiterate this because it's very important. If the Democrats succeed in causing a depression, more people will die from the economic depression than die from the virus. That is my opinion.
All right, so my opinion is we're going to have a depression regardless because there's no silver bullet. Say your azithromycin plus chloroquine actually has some efficacy. It's probably not going to, I mean, it would be a fucking miracle if it cured everybody. But we don't know based on 24 French people.
What's wrong with French people?
There are only 24 of them, and a lot of them didn't have serious cases of this shit. Some did. One did, you said. One came back from the dead. But, yeah. I mean, you can't base a whole fucking, your hopes on one guy.
You have to.
Okay,
and by the way, they've already tried to replicate those tests. They're already replicating them around the world now. The Chinese, I don't believe everything they say, but they were the first to start using it. So my point, because it's a malaria drug that you could get if you have malaria. So the point is that we have a lot of people testing it. They're testing it every hour.
So that's the same. It's the same thing going on with our. You know, like I like to say wait and see a lot, but stuff's happening so fast that by next week there will be a whole different set of circumstances for us that will tend to prove one of us more wrong than the other. Let me bring up one more thing, which is like let's do History Corner, which is
Did you read?
All right, hold on. Okay, let me say that.
The director
has asked, how do we feel about Trump calling it the Chinese virus? And the deal is that, Trump's approval numbers, since he started going on TV every day and having a press conference about the virus, have actually been inching up by 1% or 2%. So, if he wants to do that, to distract from what I consider his failures in addressing this thing, it's not worth me getting all pissed off about, because he'll either survive this crisis electorally or he won't. And whether he calls it the Chinese virus now, for whatever reason, and I ascribe shitty reasons to him doing it. It won't matter a month from now when I think the numbers will be much worse. Today in the press conference, somebody told him that Mitt Romney has entered quarantine, And Trump said, "Oh, that's too bad." And then the reporter said, "Wait, are you being sarcastic?" And Trump's like, "Oh, no." And so liberals will look at that and say, of course he was fucking being sarcastic. And conservatives will look at it and say, no, he was honestly surprised. And so, but all that is fucking trivial compared to what will happen over between now and election day.
All right, my response is a good question because it is definitely the Chinese virus, the Wuhan virus, and we have to refer to it as that as often as possible because when this is all over, there has to be a reckoning with China. We owe them $1 trillion, and I'm leaning towards just saying, you know what, we're going to take that $1 trillion and not pay you back, and we're going to use it for the $1 trillion that you cost us. It's a shame because Trump had worked out a fair deal with them for the first time, a fair trade deal, but really all this trust of China has been a disaster for our country. Apparently, 1 out of every 3 companies believes that they've stole things, they stole technology or intellectual property. They have threatened not to give us the medication that we need because 90% of our medication is made in China, and we've got to bring that back from China, and the Republicans are talking about that. Even the Democrats are beginning to say, look, we need to start treating China like they're an enemy, and we have to start bringing our industry back from there. There have been a variety, don't interrupt me, there have been a variety of proposals by the Republicans right now in the Congress to start bringing our industry back from China. Because, number one, it's dangerous during an epidemic to have your medication made there. Number two, the bastards have started to blame us for it using their propaganda. And number three, they caused this. It was their fault. If they had warned Trump a month or 2 earlier, then we could have contained it in Wuhan. But they deliberately had a lunar celebration there. They had a massive celebration. They continued to send carriers over to Europe and Italy and the United States, human carriers of the virus, and I think they did it deliberately. Well, I think that this amuses them.
I said
not to interrupt me. You can write down what you're concerned about. You've got a pad and paper.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
And then, all right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is another bit of good news that came out during this crisis that went unheralded is that the U.S. has finally developed its first hypersonic missile and had its first test today, a successful test of a hypersonic missile, which puts us ahead of China again. At the same time, the Japanese have decided that they're going to develop hypersonic missiles so that they can wipe out the Chinese Navy if necessary. So it's a good thing. May I remind you, this all came under Trump. Trump was the man that insisted that we develop the hypersonic missile. And this is making us stronger than we've ever been. So good on Trump and good on the U.S. military for putting us ahead of China. We're still behind Russia in hypersonic missile development, but I'm sure we'll catch up.
All right, so I do have one objection to calling it the Chinese virus, in that it leads to Asian people getting yelled at and threatened, an increased incident. I mean, we'll have to wait a couple months to see if statistically there's an increased the number of people getting shit for being Asian on the streets of America has increased, but there's lots of anecdotal stuff about, individual Asian people getting yelled at. So anything that puts the safety of people at risk is kind of bullshit.
May I respond to that?
No, well, no, because you didn't let me. You let me just get all my stuff out. Now, the Chinese, they do steal a lot of intellectual property. My wife had a product, and they ripped her off on it. If they like your stuff, they'll at least they'll try to rip it off. And as far as the Chinese, according to what I've read, sat on the coronavirus for 3 weeks. They suppressed information about it for 3 weeks. But that's less than the time that Trump minimized, acting on it in the U.S. Trump, it broke out in early to mid-December. Trump was briefed on it on January 3rd. Trump did the travel ban on January 30th or 31st, but then didn't take a lot of significant action until March. And one more thing is that would be good if that China begins to clean up its wet markets, which are these big, like live animal markets, which I guess are just hellaciously just messy. You got a gazillion different live animals, shitting and being ill, and that's a recipe when you have every fucking animal in the world that you could possibly eat ripped out of its natural habitat and shoved up against a bunch of other animals out of their habitat. Then viruses are mutagenic. They change. That's why we need a different flu vaccine every year, because viruses, they're little keys that they use to fucking unlock the cells that they infect. I guess those change every year. And so when you have, a bunch of animals shoved together, there's a chance that viruses, the different bits of, I guess it's RNA, DNA, I don't know, fucking can mix and make a new virus, which is apparently what happened.
All right, my response is, first of all, to the worry that Chinese will be, or Asians will be treated badly, is typical Democrat mental illness and race obsession. We can't, the main fear that Democrats have is that their fellow Americans are racists. That it seems to me that not only do they call their fellow Americans racists just to fuck with them, but also they really believe that. Your typical Democrats believe that everyone that isn't a Democrat is a racist, and so they think. So if Rick really fears that Asians will be hounded down and beaten in the streets because we call it the Chinese flu or the Chinese virus, then I feel sorry for Rick and all Democrats that believe this. Even after 9/11, there wasn't a particular violence against
there were plenty of instances
in the U.S. No, there wasn't. That was propaganda from the Islamists and from Democrats.
No, but hold on, because there were plenty of individual incidents. I don't know if statistically what happened, but I remember the Sikh guy, the fucking Sikh guy who got shot in the head because he was, wearing a fucking turban.
Okay, well, he was a Sikh.
Yeah, but the dumb shit who shot him didn't know he was a Sikh.
Okay, what I'm saying is it was statistically irrelevant. Muslims are actually expanding in this country. We've got since 9/11, we've taken over 1 million Muslims into the United States. That's how racist we are. So I wouldn't worry about America being too racist, Rick. The second point I wanted to make was that Rick, being a Democrat, is very defensive of China. I've noticed they're in alliance. They'd rather blame Trump for the virus than China. And so he's bought the Democrat line that the Chinese were only 3 weeks late. It turns out that the Chinese knew about this in November, and they murdered their own doctors who tried to report it. So not only did they murder them, but they, like typical communists, socialists, they pretended it wasn't happening because everyone wanted to cover their own butt. They were more worried about their reputation. And so they didn't, they made it a crime to even report it. So there are people dead right now and in concentration camps because they tried to react to the virus early on, months before it came to the U.S. Meanwhile, Trump waited 3 weeks to cut off the entire nation of China when we had no deaths in the U.S., and Obama waited for 1,000 people to die before he took vigorous measures. So you're saying that Trump had reacted worse than China is just typical leftist Democrat propaganda who would rather take the side of the communists than their own American president.
Well, we still haven't done enough.
The final thing I have to say, and what do you mean we still haven't done enough? He's overreacted.
Testing.
He's reacted more.
You didn't let me finish. We haven't done enough testing. We still haven't even tested 100,000 people.
Rick,
that's the way that South Korea bent the curve downward.
Okay, Rick, he's doing everything he can to get you testing. Okay?
He said that, but then we still have no fucking testing.
Rick, you're petty, and your criticism of Trump is petty and unreasonable. I'm sure he's doing everything he can to bring tests to the United States. I don't want to talk about. Wait.
It looks like it because there are lots of stories of the non-privileged. If you're in the NBA, you can get tested. Though there's a reason to test because they were bouncing off each other. And like 2 Lakers have tested positive, but there are plenty of people who haven't shown symptoms who have been able to get tested who are prominent people. But that's just a small fraction of everybody. But it's all the regular people who have good reason to get tested who can't get tested, and doctors, including a lot of medical professionals, and the doctors and nurses just say, look, we can't get you a test, just act as if you have it. And that's great for the conscientious people who go, the worried people who go in, but it doesn't do anything about the 40% of everybody who have it who are asymptomatic. Like South Korea has bent the curve downward. South Korea today has 64 new cases and they have 8,900 cases total. So their new case rate is 1%. We had like 8,000 new cases on top of 2,600 old cases. So we had a new case rate of 30%. So our curve is zipping upward because we probably have another 100,000 people who are out there, half of whom don't know they have it and are out there passing it on, many of whom we could shut down if we had adequate testing.
Well, Rick, you can't test people that are asymptomatic.
But you can.
Rick, don't interrupt me. You can, but we can't test the 330 million Americans. You have to make some choices. And what the doctors are saying is we can only test.
Again, in 2 weeks, we will have overtaken China in number of cases.
Rick, let me tell you something. Like a typical Democrat, you believe China's numbers. I don't think we can believe a fucking thing that the Chinese say about their numbers. Okay?
Well, do you think that thousands of people are now wholesale dying in China and nobody knows about it?
Well, why do you think they kicked out all the journalists from the West
I
a
don't
week
know
ago?
that they did.
Yes, they did, Rick. You didn't know that because you're a Democrat. And it's interesting to me that your press has allied yourself with the communist Chinese. Everything your every reaction is is to ally yourself with China. Yes, Rick, the Chinese kicked out all the journalists from the West a week or two ago, and because of that, we don't know how many people are dying in China. Now, I just wanted to say about the wet markets. These markets in China have a lot of strange food in them. And the reason that is strange animals, bats, snakes, eels, that are kept in terrible unsanitary conditions. And the reason is that the Chinese, being a socialist country, are unable to feed themselves. So they can't produce as much as the U.S., even though they're 4 times our population. So they have these unorthodox methods of getting food. Now, I'd just like to say, Rick, I don't have the ability to truth squad everything you say because I can't get to my computer. I'm using it. So
Rick
is truthing everything I say and trying to find a left-wing answer for it.
Well, no, I can truth you, like you just said, they kicked out all Western reporters. They kicked out reporters from 3 newspapers because apparently we're fighting with them. The New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, affecting at least 13 reporters. That's not every fucking Western reporter. That's 3 newspapers. I believe the Western world has more than 3 newspapers.
Well, that's great, Rick. I just want to congratulate you. You're on the side of China.
I'm not, but I'm saying
you just said
they kicked out all reporters. No, they kicked out reporters from 3 newspapers.
So let me get this straight, Rick. I said they kicked out journalists. I said Western journalists. I think I even said all Western journalists. And it turns out I was right that they did kick out these journalists, not every one. And so Rick thinks he's got a point on me. He's scored a point.
Yeah, because you fucking exaggerated.
And in order to score the point, he has to take the side of the communists, like a good Democrat. That's good, Rick.
I think that it.
You think that the Chinese.
Right, so let's fucking say.
So you think that the Chinese can be trusted? You think their figures are accurate? They will never do anything to shade the truth, right, Rick?
No, I think that they try to present. They'll lie if it helps them. But I think that in 2 weeks we will have overtaken China's stated number of cases. In 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
They're lying about their cases, their stated number. They're lying about their stated number.
Okay, so let's say they are.
Because I'm not a communist like you, I believe that they're lying.
All right, but
I don't understand. Why do you believe what the Chinese say, Rick?
I don't have to believe them or not, but I can say that we will have overtaken their stated number of cases in 2 weeks. And in 4 weeks, we will have 250,000 cases in the U.S., which will more than triple their stated number of cases. In 6 weeks, we'll have 550,000 cases, which will be close to 7 times their stated number of cases. I believe that they would have a hard time covering up, maybe possibly, but having 6 times as many cases as they say they have. But we'll have over 500,000 cases in the U.S. by the end of April.
Yeah, when it starts getting warmer and flu season starts to end.
I'll say, wait and see. We'll see.
All right.
Eventually, every country in the world will probably be overtaken by India because India is a chaotic country, also a democracy, so they can't crack down as effectively as a as a communist dictatorship like China, they have roughly the same population, 1.3, 1.4 billion, and I don't think they're catching all their cases. I think, if unless India is very lucky, they will eventually become the world leader in people with this fucking disease. But before then, we'll be number one.
I don't believe you. But anyway, I'm gonna sign off now.
Okay,
so I think you've had enough entertainment.
Yep. No. No, I mean, he was briefed on this January 3rd.
Well, you have to repeat what the director asked.
Oh, do I think that the impeachment was a distraction from Trump, from the business of coronavirus? And I think that, no, that the actions he took were designed to make the U.S. look better than to kind of make, like, he didn't want to let the cruise ship dock because he didn't want he said he didn't want the numbers, the cases added to the U.S. numbers, which is just like, all right, I just think he did some short-sighted shit in order to, and some of this will actually work. So if we don't test people thoroughly, we'll miss a lot of cases and our numbers will look better. We may even miss, dozens and hundreds of deaths that might be attributed to pneumonia. That will just get lost in the shit that's going to happen over the next few months.
Well, Rick has to lie in order to win the argument, so that's not what the director asked. The director asked, are the Democrats responsible because during the beginning of the crisis, they were only concerned with impeachment. That's all they did. That's all they talked about. They couldn't get any bills, any other subject through the Congress. And it turns out that in January, Trump was already working with a task force on the virus, while the Congress was completely consumed with impeachment fever. So that's not. So thank you, Director. I'd also like to say that Rick keeps giving this backhanded compliment to Trump that some of his action may work. Let me tell you something. To quarantine China is completely unparalleled in my lifetime. I have never seen an American president quarantine one of the largest trading partners we have in the world, and immediately catch heat from Biden, who called him a xenophobic racist for doing it. And that is going to go down in history as the major, courageous, intelligent thing to do. And Rick can't accept that. Rick keeps saying, well, he hasn't done good enough. You know what? He's done a hell of a lot.
He definitely hasn't done good enough. The stop.
Yeah, you have done better, huh, Rick?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I would. I mean, yeah.
Well, we're living in a goddamn police state right now.
No, we're not. You can go out. You can go wherever the fuck you want. Most businesses are closed, and you're sad about that.
My business is closed. I may go under because of you fucking Democrats.
Well, I think it's better to close down for a while than to lose tens of thousands of people in LA County and hundreds of thousands across the country. But I want to talk about
hundreds of thousands. Go ahead. When hundreds of thousands of people go broke, that's not going to be good for people either. A lot of people
but they're trying to pass a stimulus bill. So, but anyway, when you look at other crises in the history of the country, did the president survive, politically or even biologically? So, like the biggest early crisis, I would say, the very biggest among the Civil War, Lincoln. he makes it through the war, but that's about it. He gets killed like a month after surrender, so he doesn't really make it. World War One, you could call a major crisis, though it didn't affect us as much. Wilson, well, he doesn't get reelected. He's physically, he has a stroke, possibly caused or exacerbated by the Spanish flu of 1819.
I believe Wilson was reelected.
No, I mean he was, but then he was on his second term. He was elected first in 12, and then in 16 we went to war, and then he has his stroke. 17, and then he has a stroke in 18 or 19, and then he's done being president by the 1921.
Right, because he didn't run for a third term because first of all, he was stroked out, but secondly, there was a tradition begun by Washington not to run for a third term.
All right, so then the Depression starts under Hoover. Hoover doesn't get reelected. And then FDR doesn't survive World War II. And then that leaves 9/11 was terrible, but it wasn't a major. It only killed, compared to this other stuff, it killed 3,500 people, Americans, in the one terrorist attack. But probably wasn't as big as these other crises. And then you got the crash of 08, and the Republicans, Bush couldn't run again, and the Republican that led to Obama, so the Republicans couldn't hold on to the presidency. So, it's the stock market's going to drop another 1,000 points tomorrow. The stock market may lose half its value by the time we're done with this. So I don't know if Trump makes it. If you look, odds are somewhat against him surviving a national crisis like this.
Well, I'd like to respond to that because I firmly believe that the Democrats couldn't care less about anything but gaining power. And if they have to cause a depression in this country to damage Trump's chances, they'll do it. They have no program, no policies, nothing that they plan to do that would help that are going to help America, either in this virus or in anything else. They're just the only thing the Democrats have ever wanted is what all socialists want, and that is power. So they're perfectly happy to cause a depression if it will damage Trump's reelection chances.
Yeah,
so I think they're going to keep this depression going as long as they can.
Yeah, that's just
and you'll notice that it's the Democrats in New York and California that have caused this total lockdown of states.
Yeah, the whole world is shutting down. I pulled up an article. Italy shut down, Iran, France, Spain, Germany, Jordan. I mean, it's not like the U.S. is doing anything unusual.
Well, actually, South Korea did not shut down, and Japan did not shut down, and they're doing just fine.
Because they tested the fuck out of everybody. South Korea was testing 10,000 people a day. I think we only in the past maybe day we managed to hit 10,000, and they only have 18% of our population. So South Korea didn't need to shut everything down because they knew who had it and they could sequester those fucking people. So they had a different strategy. They got on it early and they caught most people, and now fucking South Korea only has a less than a 1% rise in the number of confirmed cases every day compared to us with our 30% rise.
Well, we probably already had plenty of Chinese here. They probably already got here because of our economic ties. So I don't think we're getting as many new cases necessarily as we may be, I'm sure, but we're also finding out about cases that we already had.
Yeah, but that's what you do. You have to. That's what testing is for. Is to find out who fucking has it. But
Okay,
so,
Rick, the only thing I can tell you is I'm sure we'll improve our testing. That's all I can say. I doubt that we'll do nothing about testing.
all right. So are we done here?
I am.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Director, thank you for directing this from your place of quarantine.
Yeah, the director is fantastic.
He
He's a real, yeah, that's right. Zay, G. That person it really makes this possible. So thank you, director.
It's fucking heroic.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.